There is a message moving through the unseen corridors of the universe right now, and it has been sent directly to you, carried on the frequency of someone who is only now beginning to understand what they are about to lose. This transmission is urgent. It cannot wait. The energy surrounding your situation has shifted so dramatically, so suddenly, that the very architecture of what existed between you and this person is trembling at its foundation. You need to hear this. You need to receive this fully and without resistance, because what is happening in the invisible realm of connection and consciousness is something your waking mind has not yet fully registered. They are panicking right now. In this very moment, as you receive these words, the person who once moved through your life with a certain carelessness, with a certainty that you would always be there, is experiencing something they have never felt before. A cold and hollow recognition is moving through them. A dread unlike anything they have encountered in all the time you have known each other. Because they can feel it. They can feel what has changed inside of you. They cannot name it precisely, but it moves through their awareness like a shadow falling across a room that was once warm with light. You have changed. You have shifted. Something within you that was once open, once reaching, once perpetually turned in their direction has quietly, powerfully, permanently begun to turn inward. And they feel that movement the way a compass feels the displacement of true north. It unsettles them at a depth they are not prepared to navigate. The waiting you did, the hoping you carried, the endless orientation of your heart toward someone who never fully met you there. All of that has begun its slow and sovereign dissolution. The universe is witnessing this moment. Your guides, your higher self, the sacred intelligence that has always been weaving the story of your soul's journey. All of it recognizes the significance of what is now unfolding. You are not losing. You are finally arriving. Right, they feel it in the comments if this transmission is reaching you. You changed. The moment it happened, they felt it, even if neither of you spoke a single word. There was no announcement, no declaration, no dramatic gesture of departure. There was only the quiet and devastating withdrawal of your constant energetic presence from the field of their awareness. And that withdrawal, subtle as a tide receding from shore, has sent a tremor through every layer of who they are. You stopped chasing. You stopped reaching. You stopped sending your energy forward into the space between you like an offering that was never fully received. And in that stopping, in that sacred and overdue reclamation of yourself, you became more powerful than you have ever been in this connection. Your silence is louder than your words ever were. Every time you chose not to reach out, every time you allowed the absence to simply exist without rushing to fill it, every time you redirected your attention from them and back toward your own becoming, you sent a message through the collective unconscious that landed in the center of their awareness with the force of revelation. They felt the silence, the way one feels a sudden drop in temperature. Inexplicable, immediate, undeniable. What you did, whether you recognized it as strategy or simply as the natural consequence of exhaustion finally converting into self-respect, was interrupt the pattern they had become dependent upon. Carl Jung understood this deeply when he observed that what we resist persists, but what we cease to pursue, what we allow to exist at its own distance, suddenly reveals its own fear of distance. They had grown accustomed to the architecture of your pursuit. Your consistency had become their comfort, your availability their assumption, your devotion their quiet certainty. And when that certainty began to waver, when the frequency they had grown to rely upon began to change its signal, the panic that flooded through them was instinctive and total. This is not manipulation. This is not game playing or emotional strategy. This is the simple and profound consequence of you finally choosing yourself with the same completeness that they had always chosen their own comfort over your well-being. The energetic truth of this shift cannot be faked and cannot be undone. Something has genuinely moved within you. They can feel the difference between performance and reality. What they are feeling now is entirely real. They thought you would always be there. This is the quiet assumption that lived beneath every choice they made, every moment they kept you at arm's length, every time they took the warmth of your presence and held it carelessly. the way one holds a flame without truly believing it can be extinguished. You were the constant in an equation they never bothered to fully examine because constants, by their very nature, are taken as given. You were the ground beneath their feet, and people do not think about the ground until the moment it begins to shift. The shock that is moving through them now is not simply the shock of your distance. It is the shock of their own blindness. It is the disorienting vertigo that comes when the self-image they have constructed, the image of someone who has time, who has options, who is never truly in danger of loss, suddenly fractures against the reality of what is happening between you. They believed themselves to be the one with the power in this dynamic. They carried themselves accordingly. And now the architecture of that belief is cracking open from the inside. You were the constant they took for granted. Every return of yours, every moment you came back after distance, every time you softened and opened and made yourself available again, all of it confirmed for them, at a subconscious level, that you would perpetually return. Jung wrote with piercing clarity that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Their unconscious assumption was your permanence. Their unconscious script told them that regardless of how little they offered, you would remain. That script is now meeting the reality of your departure, and the collision is cataclysmic in a way they were entirely unprepared for. The memories are beginning to surface for them in a way that feels involuntary and relentless. Not the neutral memories, not the convenient ones, but the ones that carry the specific weight of your presence, the ones that remind them of what you actually are and what actually existed between you at its most genuine. The particular quality of your attention, the specific texture of your care. These are not abstract things. These are the intimate details of another person's soul, and they are returning to this person now with an ache attached to them, a heaviness that signals not nostalgia, but recognition. The recognition of something precious that was held too loosely for far too long. The realization is landing, slowly, irrevocably, with the full weight of its truth. Inside the landscape of their mind, right now, there is no stillness. The thoughts come in waves, relentless and circling, returning always to you, to specific moments, to specific words, to the particular way you existed in their presence that they never paused to honor when honoring was possible. They are replaying everything, not selectively, not with the comfortable editing of someone constructing a pleasing narrative, but with the raw and unfiltered totality of someone who is finally, painfully seeing clearly. The mind does this when it senses genuine loss. It excavates. It reviews. It searches backward through everything that was said and unsaid, offered and withheld, looking for the precise moment when the tide began to turn. They compare everyone to you. This is the reality they are now living inside. Every interaction with another person passes through the invisible filter of your memory, and every person falls short. Not because you were perfect, not because what existed between you was without its fractures and failings, but because the specific quality of connection you offered, the unique resonance of your soul against theirs, is something that cannot be replicated or replaced or approximated by any other presence. The collective unconscious carries within it the imprint of every genuine soul connection ever formed, and this person is now feeling the absolute irreplaceability of what they are watching recede from their life. Their attempts to redirect themselves, to occupy their attention with other people, other experiences, other channels of feeling. All of these attempts arrive and dissolve without leaving any lasting impression. Nothing lands the way you landed. Nothing settles the way your presence once settled into the particular frequency of who they are. No one feels like you. This is not a romanticized memory speaking. This is the energetic truth of a soul contract, making itself known through the very absence of its partner, speaking its reality through the hollow that nothing else can fill. The obsessive quality of their thinking right now is not weakness. It is the psyche's way of processing the depth of a connection that was never properly honored or fully reckoned with. They are reckoning now, in the sleepless edges of their nights, in the distracted middle of their days, in every quiet moment that used to pass without thought, but now fills immediately with you. They are finally, inescapably reckoning. Every soul that moves through this world carries with it a distinct energetic signature, a specific and unrepeatable frequency of consciousness, of presence, of felt aliveness that leaves an impression on every space and every person it genuinely touches. Your energy, the particular quality of your presence in this person's life, occupied a space within their emotional and spiritual landscape that was far larger and far more essential than either of you fully acknowledged while it was being offered. And now that it has begun its withdrawal, the void it is leaving behind is not merely the absence of a person. It is the absence of an entire quality of being. Where your energy once filled them, now there is hollow. This is not metaphorical. This is the lived, felt, undeniable experience of someone whose system was calibrated around a specific energetic input that is no longer arriving at its previous frequency. They reach habitually for the comfort of your presence and find instead the specific and startling texture of its absence. They open channels of communication, internally and externally, through which your warmth once flowed, and encounter instead the echo of empty architecture. The structure is still there. The space you shaped is still there. But the light that once moved through it is dimming, and they feel that dimming as something that lives in the body, not merely in the mind. They attempt to fill this vacuum. This is what the ego does when confronted with a void it does not know how to metabolize. It reaches for substitutes, for distractions, for anything that can approximate the frequency of what has been lost. But the shadow self knows the difference between genuine nourishment and its counterfeit. And every substitute that is offered to this void simply confirms the void more deeply, makes its specific shape more apparent, makes the original presence, whose departure created it more irreplaceable in their awareness. The universe works with vacuums in extraordinary ways. What is emptied can receive something entirely new, or it can receive back what was lost, but transformed, elevated, made worthy of the space it is returning to. This vacancy within them is not simply suffering. It is preparation. If they have the courage to sit with it rather than fill it carelessly, it will become the very thing that breaks them open into genuine change. Subscribe to receive this guidance every week as your transformation continues. If fear were not standing between them and the full honesty of what lives inside them right now, the words would pour out of them with a completeness and a rawness they have never permitted themselves before. If the armor they constructed across the long course of their life, layer upon layer of self-protection, of practice distance, of the shadow self's elaborate architecture of defense, could be set aside for even a single unguarded moment, what would emerge would be confession. Total, undeniable, long overdue confession. They want to say that they were wrong, not in the careful, qualified way of someone managing an interaction, but in the absolute and unadorned way of someone who has arrived at the bedrock of their own failure and cannot pretend any longer that it does not exist. The pride that governs so many of their choices in relation to you, that made them withhold and withdraw and keep you at the precise distance required to feel safe, that pride is crumbling now under the weight of what it cost them. They see the cost clearly. They are living inside its consequence every waking hour. They want to say that they are sorry, not as a transaction, not as the preamble to asking something of you, but as a genuine acknowledgement of the ways they moved through your care without honoring it, received your presence without truly meeting it, occupied the space of your devotion without earning their place within it. The sorry that lives inside them now is the kind that comes after full reckoning, the kind that has passed through all the stages of self-justification and arrived finally at simple, exposed truth. They want to say that they need you. This is perhaps the most difficult of all the confessions that are pressing themselves against the walls of their composure, because need is the thing the wounded self most vigorously conceals. To need is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable is to be exposed to a loss they were never willing to risk. But what they are experiencing right now is the very loss they spent all that self-protection attempting to avoid. The thing they feared has arrived anyway, and the only words that feel honest inside that reality are the ones they have never allowed themselves to speak. The question is whether their courage will grow large enough to carry those words forward. They are at war with themselves. This is the precise and unembellished reality of where they exist right now, suspended in the interior conflict of two equally powerful and completely opposing forces that are pulling against each other with an intensity that leaves no corner of their consciousness untouched. On one side lives the pride that has been their companion across a lifetime of self-constructed distance, the pride that whispers it would be weakness to reach, humiliation to admit need, defeat to extend the hand that was so long withheld. On the other side lives something older and deeper and more fundamental than pride. It lives the love, or whatever approximation of love this person is capable of in their current state of becoming, and it is fighting now with a ferocity that pride was not prepared to encounter. The fear of rejection arrives, and the fear of permanent loss answer it. Both fears are real. Both fears are present simultaneously, and the person who holds them cannot discharge one without intensifying the other. If they reach out and you do not respond, the wound of that rejection will be unlike any they have previously endured, because it will be deserved, and deserved rejection carries a particular weight that unjust rejection never does. They know they forfeited their standing with you through their own choices. They know that reaching toward you now is reaching toward a door they may have permanently closed through their own carelessness. And yet the alternative, the continued silence, the watching from a distance as you complete your withdrawal, the witnessing of your peace as it settles into something that has no space for their return, that alternative is becoming unbearable in a way that grows with each passing day rather than diminishing. Jung understood this particular torment when he described the confrontation between the persona, the constructed face we show the world, and the authentic self that exists beneath it. Their persona insists on composure. Their authentic self is breaking through the composure with increasing urgency. There will come a moment, and it may have already arrived, or it may be approaching now through the invisible progression of their interior crisis, when the pride simply breaks, when the fear of loss overrides every other calculation, when the self that has been performing distance can no longer sustain the performance against the reality of what it is losing. That moment is very close. The universe does not move through dramatic declarations alone. It moves more often through the subtle and accumulating language of signs, small signals that, when gathered together and read with the attention of someone who has learned to see beyond the surface of ordinary experience, compose a message of unmistakable clarity. There are signs emerging around you and around this connection right now that carry this message, and they are worth receiving with full awareness rather than dismissing as coincidence. Synchronicity, as Jung defined it, is the meaningful correspondence between inner states and outer events, and what you are beginning to notice or are about to begin noticing is the outer world reflecting back the inner movement of this other soul toward you. They are watching from a distance. The digital traces of their attention, the quiet presence behind a viewed story, the hesitation at the edge of a message never sent, the lingering near the fragments of your public life that remain accessible to them. These are not casual movements. These are the behaviors of someone whose restraint is inactive and losing conflict with their pull toward you. Every view, every lingering, every invisible presence is an act of yearning that has not yet found the courage to become contact. The energetic signature of their attention is reaching you even through the silence, even through the absence of any direct communication. There are moments when you think of them suddenly, without context, without any obvious trigger that explains the arrival of their presence in your awareness. These moments are not random. The energetic connection that exists between two souls who have genuinely touched each other at depth does not dissolve simply because communication has ceased. When they are directing a concentrated wave of thought and feeling in your direction, you receive it, even if you receive it only as an inexplicable awareness of their presence moving through the field of your consciousness. Trust these moments. They are transmissions. Their energy is becoming less stable, less certain, less governed by the composure they have been maintaining. Those who are close to them may notice a distraction, a restlessness, a quality of absence, even in the midst of presence. This is the interior battle reaching the surface. This is the war between pride and genuine feeling beginning to show its effects in the outer world. When a person is truly at the precipice of breaking through their own defenses, the world around them begins to register it. The tipping point is not distant. The movement is already in progress. Share this with someone who is feeling their person's energy shifting right now. You hold the power now, not the performance of power, not the strategy of power, not the manufactured leveraging of another person's emotions for a desired outcome, but the genuine, grounded, soul-level authority that comes from having moved through the full arc of this experience and arrived on the other side of it with your integrity intact and your sense of self more consolidated than it was before any of this began. This is not a position that was handed to you. This is a position you arrived at through the slow and often painful work of releasing what was not serving your becoming and redirecting your life force toward your own healing and growth. The power you hold right now is the natural consequence of that work. You do not owe them your waiting. This truth deserves to be received fully, without the softening that the conditioned tendency toward accommodation might apply to it. Whatever existed between you is real, and that reality carries its own weight and its own significance in the story of your soul's journey. But the reality of that connection does not create an obligation to hold yourself in perpetual suspension for someone who could not meet you with the consistency and the honesty you deserved. Your life is not a waiting room. Your becoming is not on hold pending their readiness. Your peace is not contingent upon their arrival. Your peace is the priority, not as a consolation, not as the thing you attend to in the absence of what you truly wanted, but as the primary and non-negotiable orientation of your energy and your intention. The paradox that the universe has arranged within this situation is one of extraordinary precision. The more completely you inhabit your own peace, the more powerfully you become the thing they cannot resist returning to. And the more completely you inhabit your own peace, the less the question of their return governs your experience of being alive. Whether they return or not, you have already won. You have won back the self that was quietly dissolving in the hoping and the waiting. You have won back the energy that was perpetually reaching outward and can now be directed toward the building of the life that is genuinely yours. You have won the most essential thing that was ever at stake in this entire experience. Not them. You. This story is reaching its climax. The invisible forces that have been moving beneath the surface of everything you have experienced in this connection, the soul contract that drew you together, the karmic lessons encoded in the friction and the longing, the divine timing that has governed each turn of this narrative with a precision that your conscious mind could not have engineered. All of it is now converging toward a moment of resolution that the universe has been preparing from the very beginning of this particular chapter of your life. What is coming cannot be stopped. What is being arranged in the unseen realm of your highest good is already in motion, already irrevocable, already finding its way toward manifestation in the world you can see and touch and live inside. There are only two ways this reaches its conclusion, and both of them carry you forward into something greater than where you have been. Either they will return, broken open by the full encounter with what their choices cost them, stripped of the armor that kept them from meeting you honestly, arriving with a humility and a wholeness that could not have existed before this passage of loss and reckoning. And when they return in this form, the meeting that follows will be unlike anything that existed between you before. It will be built on truth rather than assumption, on genuine reciprocity rather than the uneven offering that defined what came before. Or they will not return in time. And in that space, you will have already become so consolidated in your own becoming, so fully arrived in the life that belongs to you, that the door will close not in devastation, but in the quiet and certain peace of someone who knows their own value completely. Both outcomes belong to you. Both outcomes are victories written in the language of your soul's evolution. The universe is not arranging the return of this person as the reward for your journey. The universe is aligning you with what you truly deserve. Whether that arrives in the form of this person transformed, or in the form of the life and love that were always meant to find you, now finally able to reach you because you are no longer turned away from them and toward someone who could not honor what you were offering. Your path forward is certain. Walk it without apology, without hesitation. and without looking backward for permission to continue becoming who you are.